The massive black ship cut through space like a knife through soft metal. Inside the war vessel, 12 alien warriors sat in perfect silence. Their bodies were tall and covered in hard shells that looked like armor made of bone. Sharp claws clicked against metal seats as they waited for orders. Commander Kuehl stood at the front of the ship. His red eyes glowed in the dark as he looked at the planet ahead. The world spun slowly in front of them, covered in blue water and white clouds. It looked peaceful, but their computers told a different story. "This is a Class 13 death world," Kuehl said to his warriors. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. "The radiation levels would kill most of us in hours. The gravity is 3 times what our bodies can handle. The air itself burns with dangerous chemicals." The other warriors nodded. They had heard stories about death worlds, places where only the strongest and most dangerous creatures could live. They had never seen one before, but they knew the legends. "How did these humans survive here?" asked Warrior Vex. His claws scratched the metal floor as he spoke. "Our records show they are small and weak. They have no natural armor, no claws or fangs. They should be dead." Kuehl turned to face his squad. Behind him, the planet Terra Nova grew larger on the screen. "That is what we must find out. The Galactic Council wants to know if these creatures are a threat. We have conquered 17 worlds without losing a single warrior. This should be easy." The ship's computer made a soft beeping sound. "Landing zone located," it announced. "Human settlement detected. Population, approximately 2,000 individuals." 2,000, repeated Kuehl. "Such a small number. They must be the last survivors clinging to life on this toxic world, warrior." Hex raised one clawed hand. "Commander, what if they have weapons we do not understand? Death world creatures are known for their violence." "Look at them," Kuehl pointed to the screen. The computer showed images of the human settlement, small buildings made of simple materials, gardens with green plants, children playing in open spaces. They build with wood and stone. They grow food in dirt. These are not advanced warriors. They are barely surviving. The ship began to shake as it entered the planet's atmosphere. The warriors felt the crushing weight of the world's gravity pressing down on them. Their armor's support systems kicked in, helping their bodies cope with the dangerous environment. "Atmosphere is toxic," reported the ship's computer. "High oxygen levels detected. Dangerous radiation from the local star. Temperature variations that would kill most life forms. And yet the humans live here," said Kuehl. "They walk around without protection. They breathe this poison air like it is nothing. What kind of creatures are they?" Through the ship's windows, the warriors could see the landscape below. Tall mountains reached up into the sky. Deep forests covered the land. Rivers of water flowed between rocky hills. Everything looked green and alive, but their instruments screamed warnings about deadly conditions. "The plants themselves are dangerous," said Warrior Zach, reading from his scanner. "They produce chemicals that would harm our nervous systems. Even the water contains minerals that would damage our organs." "Yet the humans drink it," Kuehl said quietly. "They eat the plants. They swim in the water. Either they are immune to all poison, or they are the most dangerous life forms in the galaxy." The ship touched down in a clearing near the human settlement. Steam rose from the ground where their engines heated the morning dew. The warriors could see humans in the distance, moving around their buildings like nothing was wrong. "They do not run," observed Warrior Knox. "When we land on other worlds, the inhabitants flee in terror or attack immediately. These humans just continue their activities." Kuehl checked his weapon one more time. Perhaps they do not understand the danger we represent. Or perhaps they do not fear death because they face it every moment on this world. The ship's door opened with a hiss. Immediately, alarms began ringing inside their armor. The air outside was full of things that wanted to kill them. But somehow the humans lived and breathed in this toxic environment every day. "Stay alert," Kuehl commanded as they stepped onto the alien soil. "These Deathworld creatures may look weak, but they have survived where we would perish. That makes them more dangerous than any enemy we have faced." The warriors formed a tight group as they walked toward the settlement. Their heavy footsteps left deep marks in the soft earth. Around them, strange birds sang in the trees. Insects buzzed through the air. Life was everywhere, thriving in conditions that should have been impossible. "Commander," said Warrior Vex, "I am detecting a strong chemical signal from the settlement. Something is burning." "Weapons?" asked Kuehl. "Unknown, but the concentration is high enough to be dangerous." As they got closer to the human buildings, they could see people moving around normally, men and women going about their morning tasks, children running and playing. None of them seemed worried about the toxic air or the deadly radiation from above. "There!" Kuehl pointed with one clawed finger. "A large building in the center. That must be where their war chief lives." The building was bigger than the others, with many windows and what looked like a gathering place. Humans were going in and out, carrying things and talking to each other. Their voices carried on the poisonous wind, sounding almost happy. "They are not afraid," whispered Warrior Hex. "How can they not be afraid?" Commander Kuehl did not answer. He was beginning to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake coming to this place. But it was too late to turn back now. They had a mission to complete. The warriors of the Vorthak Dominion walked toward the human settlement, not knowing that they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of what it meant to be dangerous forever. The human settlement was nothing like what the warriors expected. As they walked through the streets, they saw children playing games in the toxic dirt, women hanging clothes to dry in the poisonous air, men working with their bare hands, touching plants that their scanners said were deadly. "This makes no sense," muttered Warrior Vex. "How are the small ones still alive?" Commander Kuehl watched a human child run past them, laughing as she chased something that looked like a small furry creature. The child's skin was exposed to the deadly radiation. She breathed the toxic air like it was nothing. Her feet touched the contaminated ground without protection. "Perhaps their young are expendable," suggested Warrior Nox. "Some species sacrifice the weak to save the strong." But as they watched, they saw adult humans rushing to help when one child fell down. A woman picked up the small one and checked for injuries with gentle hands. There was no sign of the cold calculation they expected from Deathworld survivors. The large building ahead of them was making strange noises, sounds that could only be described as pleasant. Voices talking and laughing, metal objects clinking together, and underneath it all, a low rumbling noise that made their armor vibrate. "What is that sound?" asked Warrior Zack, checking his weapons. "Unknown," replied Kuehl, "but we will find out." As they approached the entrance, a human male stepped outside. He was smaller than any of the warriors, with dark hair and friendly eyes. He showed no fear when he saw the 12 towering aliens in their battle armor. "Hello," the human said, raising one hand in what their computers said was a greeting gesture. "You must be our visitors from space. I am Day. Welcome to New Sol." The warriors stopped walking. In all their battles across 17 worlds, No one had ever greeted them with such casual friendliness. Usually there was screaming, running, or immediate surrender. "We demand to speak with your war chief," Commander Kuehl announced, his voice amplified by his armor's speakers. Day tilted his head like he was thinking. "War chief? We don't really have one of those. But if you're looking for someone in charge, you should talk to Mayor Kim. She's probably inside having breakfast with everyone else." "Breakfast?" repeated Kuehl. The word translated, but it made no sense in this context. Yes, it's morning meal time. The whole community gathers to eat together before starting the day's work. "Would you like to join us?" The warriors looked at each other. Their armor's communication systems crackled with confused whispers. An invitation to share food was not part of any battle plan they had ever studied. This could be a trap, warned Warrior Hex through their private channel. "Or a ritual before combat," added Warrior Vex. Day was still waiting patiently for an answer, showing no signs of aggression or fear. Behind him, more humans were visible through the open doors of the building. They seemed to be engaged in some kind of group activity involving the consumption of substances. "We will observe your breakfast ritual," Kuehl decided. "But know that we are armed and ready for battle." "Of course you are," Day said with a smile. "Traveling through space must be dangerous. Come on in. Nari made extra food this morning. She always cooks too much when we have guests." The warriors followed Day through the entrance, their heavy footsteps making the wooden floor creak. Inside, they found themselves in a large room filled with humans sitting at long tables. The air was thick with steam and strange smells that made their sensors go crazy with warnings. "Chemical weapons detected," whispered Warrior Knox. "Multiple toxins in the air," confirmed Warrior Zack. But the humans were breathing normally. More than normally. They seemed to be enjoying whatever was causing the toxic cloud that filled the room. A human female approached them, carrying a flat object covered in steaming substances. She had kind eyes and moved with the confidence of someone who felt completely safe. "I'm Nari, Day's wife," she said. "You must be hungry after your long journey. I hope you like Korean food." She held up the flat object toward Commander Kuehl. Their scanners immediately identified multiple dangerous compounds, capsaicin levels that would cause severe pain, fermented biological matter that could poison their digestive systems, chemical combinations that should not exist in nature. That is food?" Kuehl managed to ask. "Kimchi jjigae," Nari explained proudly. "It's a stew made with fermented vegetables. Very healthy and full of good bacteria for your stomach." Bacteria. She was offering them biological warfare agents and calling them good. Around the room, other humans were consuming similar substances. A man at a nearby table was drinking a black liquid that registered as a powerful stimulant. A woman was eating what appeared to be the reproductive cells of some creature. An elderly human was cheerfully consuming something that glowed orange and registered toxic levels of chemical irritants. "They are poisoning themselves," whispered Warrior Hex. "And enjoying it," added Warrior Vex in horror. The rumbling sound they had heard outside was coming from a machine in the corner. A human male named Hyun was feeding beans into it, and it was crushing them into powder with tremendous force. The sound was like the grinding of bones. "Fresh coffee," Hyun announced happily. "Who wants some?" Several humans raised their hands, with enthusiasm. Kuehl watched as the human poured the dark liquid into small containers. The smell reached the warriors even through their armor's filters. Their computers identified it as a powerful psychoactive drug. "They consume mind-altering substances as part of their morning routine," observed Warrior Knox. A young human male named Kang was sitting nearby, methodically consuming what their scanners identified as protein from an unborn creature. He mixed it with a red sauce that registered dangerous levels of acidic compounds. "Excuse me," Kang said politely to the warriors. "Would you like to try some eggs? They're fresh from our chickens this morning." Chickens. The humans kept other creatures captive and harvested their reproductive cells for consumption. This was beyond what any civilized species would consider acceptable behavior. An elderly human female approached their group. Her hair was white with age, but she moved with surprising energy for someone who had survived so long on a death world. "I'm Bach," she said with a warm smile. "You look like strong warriors. You should try my kimchi. It will give you energy for battle." She held out a small bowl filled with red and white chunks that were clearly fermenting biological matter. The smell alone was triggering every toxin warning their systems had. We do not require energy for battle," Kyul said carefully. "Nonsense," Bach laughed. "Everyone needs good food. This kimchi has been buried in the ground for 6 months. It's perfect now, buried in the ground for 6 months. They were eating things that had been rotting in contaminated soil for half a year. Commander Kyul began to understand that they were not dealing with primitive survivors barely clinging to life. These humans had turned their death world into a weapon. They consumed poison for pleasure. They fed biological warfare agents to their children. They gathered in groups to share toxic substances and called it a social activity, and they were inviting complete strangers to join them. The warriors of the Vorthak Dominion stood frozen at the edge of the room, watching in growing horror as the humans of New Seoul continued their normal morning meal, completely unaware that they were demonstrating the most terrifying survival capabilities any species had ever witnessed. The situation became worse as more humans joined the gathering. Each new person brought fresh horrors that the warriors had never imagined possible. A human named Boram sat down at a nearby table with a bowl full of vegetables that were clearly in the middle of decomposing. She picked up pieces with 2 thin sticks and put them in her mouth with obvious pleasure. "The kimchi is extra spicy today," Boram announced to her friends. "I love the way it burns." Burns. She was describing pain as something enjoyable. Warrior. Vex's scanner showed that the substances on Boram's eating sticks contained enough capsaicin to incapacitate his entire nervous system. Yet she was consuming them willingly and asking for more. "Commander," whispered Warrior Hex through their private channel, "are we witnessing some kind of death ritual?" "I do not know," Kyul replied. "But if it is, they are the most cheerful death-seekers I have ever encountered." A younger human male named June approached the food preparation area. He picked up a container filled with red liquid that made their sensors scream warnings about chemical burns. Without hesitation, he poured the liquid over his food until it was covered in what could only be described as liquid fire. "This hot sauce is amazing," June said to the human preparing food. "Did you make it yourself?" "My own recipe," replied the cook proudly. "I grew the peppers in my garden. The hottest ones reached 50,000 Scoville units this year. 50,000 units. The warriors' computers helpfully informed them that exposure to even a small amount of such concentrated capsaicin would cause severe tissue damage to most known species. This human had deliberately grown plants specifically to produce higher levels of natural toxins, and he was proud of it. The elderly human named Bach was now sitting with several other older humans. She was eating her fermented vegetables while describing how she prepared them. The secret is to bury the pots deep in the ground, she explained. Let the good bacteria work for months. The longer it ferments, the better it tastes. One of her listeners, an older man named Gil, nodded enthusiastically. My wife buried kimchi last spring. We dug it up last week, and it was perfect. The smell could wake the dead. They were describing biological warfare preparation techniques as if they were discussing art. The warriors listened in growing alarm as the humans shared tips for maximizing the toxicity of their food. I add extra garlic, said another elderly woman. And ginger root. The more it burns going down, the healthier it is for you. This was beyond the understanding of any rational being. They were intentionally causing themselves pain and calling it healthy. A human child ran up to Bach and tugged on her clothes. Grandmother, can I have some of your kimchi? Of course, little one, Bach said with a gentle smile. She picked up some of the toxic vegetables with her sticks and offered them to the child. The warriors watched in horror as the small human opened her mouth and accepted the biological weapons. Her face turned red from the chemical burn, but instead of crying in pain, she smiled and asked for more. They are feeding poison to their young, whispered Warrior Knox. What kind of species does this to their own children? The answer became clear as they continued to observe. Every human in the room, from the smallest child to the oldest adult, was consuming substances that would kill most galactic species. And they were doing it with joy. A human named Wu sat down near the warriors with a small, clear container filled with liquid. He raised it toward them in what appeared to be a greeting gesture. Would you like some soju? He asked politely. It's good with breakfast. Their scanners immediately identified the liquid as ethyl alcohol at a concentration of 40%. The warriors' medical databases informed them that such a concentration would shut down their nervous systems within minutes. You drink that? Asked Commander Kuehl, unable to hide his shock. Sure, Wu replied, taking a large gulp. It's not very strong. Some of the guys like the rice wine better, but I prefer soju in the morning. Not very strong. He had just consumed enough alcohol to kill 3 Vorthak warriors and described it as weak. The human named Hyun brought over several small containers filled with the black stimulant liquid he had been preparing. The smell was strong enough to make the warriors' eyes water inside their helmets. Coffee for our guests, Hyun announced. I made it extra strong since you look like you can handle it. Extra strong. They had made the psychoactive drug more concentrated specifically for visitors they had never met before. Nari appeared again with another container of the steaming stew. She ladled it into bowls and began distributing it to the humans around them. Each person accepted the biological weapons with gratitude and began consuming them immediately. The jjigae is perfect today, said a woman named Mira. Just the right amount of spice. I can feel it clearing my sinuses, added a man named Tae. Nothing like kimchi stew to wake you up in the morning. They were describing the effects of chemical irritants on their respiratory systems as beneficial. Their bodies were responding to poison by producing defensive reactions, and they interpreted this as positive. A group of humans at a corner table were sharing something that looked like small white orbs. When one person bit into an orb, clear liquid ran down their chin. The smell reached the warriors even through their air filters. Raw garlic, explained a human named Yoon, noticing their attention. Great for the immune system. My grandfather eats 3 cloves every morning. Raw garlic. They were consuming concentrated chemical irritants without any preparation to reduce their toxicity. The warriors began to understand something that changed their entire perception of the mission. These humans were not struggling survivors on a death world. They were apex predators who had turned their entire food chain into a weapon. Every meal was a battle against toxins that would kill other species. Every drink was a test of their body's ability to process dangerous chemicals. Every social gathering was a demonstration of their species' incredible resistance to harm, and they invited strangers to join them. Commander Kayul realized that what they were witnessing was not a breakfast. It was a display of power so casual and natural that the humans did not even recognize it as threatening. They were showing the warriors exactly how dangerous they were by doing something they considered completely normal. The most terrifying part was the invitation. These Death World creatures were offering to share their weapons with alien visitors they had never met before. Either they were completely insane, or they were so confident in their abilities that they felt no threat from 12 heavily armed alien warriors. Looking around the room at the humans happily consuming their morning poisons, Commander Kuehl began to suspect it was the latter. As the humans finished their toxic breakfast, they began talking about their plans for the day. Each conversation revealed new horrors that the warriors had not considered possible. A young human named Tay stretched his arms and smiled at his friends. "I think I'll go hiking in the mountains today. The weather looks perfect." The warriors' environmental scanners immediately focused on the mountain range visible through the windows. The peaks disappeared into the upper atmosphere where radiation levels would kill most life forms. The computer calculated that the climb would expose anyone to deadly cosmic rays and temperature variations that could freeze or burn living tissue. "Perfect weather for a death march," whispered Warrior Hex. But the other humans seemed to think Tay's plan was normal. A woman named Yoon nodded enthusiastically. "That sounds wonderful. I wish I could join you, but I promised to help in the gardens today. The tomatoes need to be harvested." Gardens. The warriors looked through the windows at the green spaces around the settlement. Their scanners showed soil contaminated with radiation, heavy metals, and organic compounds that would poison any food grown in them. Yet the humans were cultivating plants in this toxic earth and planning to eat the results. "The soil analysis is showing impossible levels of contamination," reported Warrior Knox quietly. "How are they growing anything edible?" The answer came from an older human named Kang, who was discussing farming techniques with several others. "The secret is to add plenty of compost," he explained. "I mix in decomposed organic matter, fish bones, and aged manure. The more bacteria in the soil, the better the plants grow. Bacteria, fish bones, manure. They were deliberately adding biological contamination to their growing medium and expecting it to improve their food supply." A human child ran up to Kang with excitement. "Uncle Kang, can I help dig up the carrots today?" "Of course, little one," Kang replied. "But remember to wash your hands afterward. We don't want you tracking garden dirt into the house." The child nodded seriously and ran off to join other young humans who were planning to spend their day in direct contact with contaminated soil. Their parents showed no concern about this exposure to toxic substances. A group of adult humans were discussing their work plans near the warriors. A man named Wu was explaining his responsibilities as the settlement's mechanic. "The water pump needs maintenance today," he said. "I'll need to drain the system and replace the filters. Good thing I have those acid-resistant gloves." Acid-resistant gloves. The water they drank required special protection to handle safely, yet they consumed it daily without apparent harm. A woman named Borum was describing her job at the settlement's small factory. We're processing the metal ore from the south mines. The smelting furnaces should reach peak temperature by noon. The warrior's sensors detected massive heat signatures from the direction she indicated. Temperatures hot enough to melt their armor were considered normal working conditions for these humans. They work with molten metal as a routine activity, observed Warrior Vex in amazement. The conversation that truly broke the warrior's understanding came from a human named June, who was excitedly telling his friends about a new discovery. "I found a hot spring up in the hills yesterday," he announced. "The water is perfectly warm for bathing. Who wants to join me this afternoon?" Their scanners immediately analyzed the geological data from the indicated location. The hot springs contained sulfur compounds, heavy metals, and mineral concentrations that would cause severe chemical burns to most species. "Perfectly warm for bathing," repeated Commander Kuehl in disbelief. The humans were planning to immerse themselves voluntarily in water that was essentially a chemical weapons bath. An elderly human woman named Bach was telling stories to a group of children who listened with fascination. "When I was your age," she said, "we used to swim in the ocean during storm season. The waves were twice as tall as a person, and the water was rough enough to knock you down. But it was so much fun." The children's eyes grew wide with excitement, not fear. They were being told about recreational activities that involved deliberate exposure to deadly natural forces. "Can we go swimming in the big waves, grandmother?" asked one small child. "When you're older and stronger," Bach promised, "you need to build up your endurance first." Build up endurance. They had training programs to increase their tolerance for dangerous conditions. A group of teenage humans were making plans for their evening activities. They spoke casually about things that would require emergency medical intervention for most species. "Let's have a bonfire on the beach tonight," suggested a young man named Min. "I'll bring the spicy grilled meat." Bonfire. Spicy grilled meat. They were planning to combine open flames with food enhanced with additional chemical irritants. "I'll bring the soju," added a young woman named So, "and maybe some of that rice wine from the festival. Multiple intoxicating substances. They were planning to impair their judgment while exposed to fire and toxic food." The final revelation came when Day approached the warriors with a friendly smile. "I hope you enjoyed seeing our morning routine," he said. "Would you like to stay for lunch? Nari is planning to cook bulgogi today. It's beef marinated in a special sauce and grilled over an open flame. Lunch. They wanted the warriors to observe another meal that would undoubtedly involve even more dangerous substances. The marinade has soy sauce, garlic, ginger, and Korean. Pear," Nari added helpfully. "I let it soak for at least 24 hours so the flavors really penetrate the meat." 24 hours. They were describing controlled decomposition as a food preparation technique. "We also have fresh banchan," continued Day. "Small side dishes with different pickled vegetables, all fermented in our traditional way. More fermented biological weapons. They had an entire cuisine based on controlled decay." Commander Kuehl looked around the room at the humans cleaning up after their morning meal. Children were helping adults carry dishes made of materials that would shatter under the weight of Vorthak claws. Elderly people were moving with energy that should have been impossible after decades of exposure to death world conditions. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was healthy. Everyone was planning to spend their day engaging in activities that would kill most galactic species, and they were inviting complete strangers to join them. The warriors finally understood what they were facing. These humans had not just survived on a death world. They had adapted so completely that they no longer recognized how dangerous their normal life was. They consumed poison for breakfast. They worked with deadly materials as routine jobs. They played in environments that were weapons of mass destruction, and they considered all of it perfectly normal. The most terrifying realization was that the humans were not trying to intimidate anyone. They were genuinely being hospitable. This was just how they lived. Commander Kyul knew that his mission had changed completely. They were not here to assess a potential threat. They were standing in the middle of the most dangerous place in the galaxy, surrounded by the most dangerous creatures they had ever encountered. And those creatures were asking if they wanted to stay for lunch. Commander Kyul stood frozen as the full implications of what he had witnessed became clear. Around him, his warriors were equally still, their combat training useless against an enemy they had never imagined could exist. The humans continued their normal activities, completely unaware that they had just demonstrated capabilities that would terrify the entire Galactic Confederation. Children ran outside to play in the toxic dirt. Adults prepared to work with materials that could melt starship hulls. Elderly people planned recreational activities in environments that constituted biological warfare zones. "Commander," whispered Warrior Vex through their private channel, "what are our orders?" Kyul did not answer immediately. In 17 conquered worlds, he had never faced a situation like this. How do you fight an enemy that considers chemical weapons a breakfast beverage? How do you intimidate creatures that voluntarily expose themselves to radiation for entertainment? A human child ran up to Warrior Hex and looked up at his towering armored form with curiosity instead of fear. "Are you robots?" the child asked. "Your armor looks really cool." Hex stared down at the small human through his helmet's sensors. This tiny creature lived every day in conditions that would kill him within hours. She breathed poison, ate biological weapons, and played in contaminated soil. Yet she approached a heavily armed alien warrior with the innocent curiosity of someone who had never known true danger, because to her, nothing was dangerous. This was just normal life. We are not robots," Hex managed to say. "That's so awesome," the child exclaimed. "Are you here to visit our school? We're learning about space today." School. They had educational facilities where they taught their young about the galaxy while living on a world that could kill most galactic species. Nari approached the group again, this time carrying a plate covered with small containers. "I brought some banchan for you to try," she said cheerfully. "These are traditional Korean side dishes, very mild, perfect for first-time visitors." Mild. The warriors' scanners immediately detected multiple dangerous compounds in the small containers. Fermented cabbage with capsaicin levels that would cause severe pain. Pickled vegetables soaked in acidic solutions. Bean paste that contained enough sodium to disrupt their electrical systems. This was what humans considered mild food. "Thank you," said Commander Kyul carefully. "But we do not require sustenance at this time." "Oh, you must be nervous about trying new food," Nari said with understanding. "I remember when I first tried June's mother's extra spicy kimchi. I thought it might be too hot for me." Too hot. She was describing food that could literally burn tissue as merely concerning for its temperature. An older human man approached the group. This was Mayor Kim, the settlement's leader that Day had mentioned earlier. "Welcome to New Seoul," Mayor Kim said with a formal bow. "I apologize that we don't have better facilities for receiving official visitors. We're a simple farming community. They were describing a settlement that successfully operated in conditions that would require military-grade equipment for most species. "We understand you might want to assess our capabilities," Mayor Kim continued. "Please feel free to observe our daily operations. We have nothing to hide." Nothing to hide. They were offering to show their military capabilities to potential enemies. Either they were completely insane, or they were so confident in their abilities that they felt no threat from armed aliens. Our mining operation produces iron ore, Mayor Kim explained. Our farms grow enough food to feed the entire settlement, plus surplus for trade. Our manufacturing facility produces tools and equipment. We're completely self-sufficient on a death world. They had created a thriving civilization in an environment that most species used as a final weapons test site. The children attend school where they learn mathematics, science, history, and art, Mayor Kim continued. Our medical facility has never had a serious emergency because everyone stays healthy with good food and exercise. Healthy with good food. They were describing a diet of biological weapons as a health program. Commander Kuehl realized that every detail Mayor Kim mentioned was actually a demonstration of impossible military capabilities. Mining operations that could function in toxic environments, agriculture that could grow food in contaminated soil, manufacturing that could operate under deadly radiation, education systems that produced citizens capable of thriving under these conditions, and a population so healthy that medical emergencies were rare. Perhaps you would like to see our recreational facilities, suggested Mayor Kim. The children especially enjoy the swimming area we built near the hot springs. Recreational facilities. Swimming in chemical-laden water heated by geological processes that would cook most life forms. Or maybe you're interested in our cultural activities, added Mayor Kim. Tonight we're having a community barbecue. Everyone brings their favorite spicy dishes to share. Community barbecue, a social gathering centered around the consumption of food enhanced with additional chemical weapons. The breaking point came when a human teenager named Min ran up to the group with excitement. Mayor Kim, are these the space visitors? That's so cool. Are they here for the Pepper Festival next week? Pepper Festival. They had celebrations specifically dedicated to plants that produced natural toxins. We're competing to see who can grow the hottest peppers this year, Min explained to the warriors. Last year, Farmer Lee's peppers tested at over 100,000 Scoville units. I think I can beat that this year. 100,000 units. They were deliberately breeding plants to produce higher concentrations of chemical weapons. And they were proud of it. The festival includes eating contests, Min continued enthusiastically. You should enter. It would be amazing to see how space aliens handle our food. Eating contests. Competitive consumption of biological weapons. Commander Kuehl made his decision. We must return to our ship, he announced suddenly. The humans looked disappointed, but understanding. Of course, said Mayor Kim. Long-distance travel must be tiring. You're welcome to visit again any time. Before you go, added Nari, please take some food with you. I packed some kimchi and dried vegetables for your journey. She was offering to give them biological weapons as a farewell gift. The warriors began backing toward their ship, their combat instincts screaming that they were in mortal danger despite the complete lack of aggressive behavior from the humans. It was wonderful meeting you, called Day. Safe travels. Come back soon, added the child, who had asked about robots. The humans stood in their settlement, waving goodbye to the alien warriors, children and adults together, all smiling and friendly, all completely unaware that they had just demonstrated the most terrifying survival capabilities in the known galaxy. The warriors reached their ship and sealed the doors with emergency speed. As the vessel lifted off from the toxic surface, Commander Kuehl began composing his report to the Galactic Confederation. Report: Species Assessment of Humans on Terra Nova. Recommendation: Immediate reclassification as Tier 1 Apex Predator Species. Reason: Subjects demonstrate casual resistance to chemical, biological, and environmental weapons that would eliminate Confederation military forces. Daily survival activities include consumption of substances that register as weapons of mass destruction. Population shows no signs of stress or degradation despite constant exposure to lethal conditions. He paused, watching the human settlement disappear below them. Additional recommendation: avoid all direct contact with species that considers biological warfare a social activity. These creatures have weaponized their entire food chain and are capable of surviving conditions that would constitute extreme military attacks against any known species. Final note: subjects attempted to share their weapons with alien visitors as a gesture of friendship. Either this represents the ultimate confidence in their abilities, or they are completely insane. Either possibility makes them extremely dangerous. As their ship escaped the Deathworld's gravity, the warriors sat in silence. They had conquered 17 civilizations without losing a single warrior, but they had just encountered a species that made them feel like helpless children, and that species had invited them to stay for lunch. Down on Terra Nova, the humans of New Sol continued their normal day. Children played in the gardens, adults worked with materials that could kill most galactic species. Elderly people planned evening activities in environments that constituted weapons of mass destruction. None of them knew that they had just prevented an alien invasion by offering to share their breakfast, and none of them would ever understand why the strange visitors had seemed so frightened by a simple invitation to try some homemade kimchi.